Hello everyone and welcome to Season 5, Episode 14 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in NXT history with match number 37 on our list, which is the match between Johnny Gargano and Aleister Black from the NXT TakeOver WarGames 2018 event held on November the 17th of 2018. Now, this is a really interesting match because, when we look at pro wrestling matches, we look at, different aspects of what makes them great or not so great. And a lot of times that's story or, crowd heat or the match itself, whatever the case may be, our personal hype going into it, sometimes plays a factor. This is a match that, putting it on this countdown, I'm looking at it really just from the merit of the in-ring sequences, which, is a little weird to me because there are a lot of flaws that I find with this match. And this match is part of, I don't want to say a period where I started to fall out of love a little bit with NXT. But it's one of the markers along the way that, made me kind of, lose that love that it developed so greatly, in the years prior to 2018. So how we got to this match, Johnny Gargano was at war with Tommaso Ciampa. That's something that we will talk more about later on in this season. Tommaso Ciampa ended up winning the NXT title from the champion Aleister Black due to botched interference from Johnny Gargano. Basically, Gargano, was so intent on keeping Ciampa from winning that NXT title that he, ultimately it backfired and he cost Black the title to Ciampa. Gargano, would try to win the title himself, but his rage that he had for Tommaso Ciampa, would prove to get the better of him at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in 2018, with one of the most laughable finishes of all time in their last man standing match that the two of them had. Aleister Black would seek revenge on Johnny Gargano and lay him out with Black Mass on an episode of NXT television. This would lead to an angle where somebody would attack Aleister Black in the parking lot, and it would be this ongoing mystery, for several weeks at the very least, as to who attacked Aleister Black, right? Who shot JR, who attacked Black in the parking lot. We would eventually find out through Nikki Cross in a weird development that it was Johnny Gargano that did it, and this would lead to a heel turn for Johnny Gargano. The reason why I take so much umbrage with all of this is Johnny Gargano's heel turn. It felt really forced. The crowd, they loved him. They really didn't want to boo him. It kind of came out of left field, and it became this big on again, off again. Is he a face? Is he a heel? Him and Ciampa are friends again. Now they're feuding again, and it really soured me on it. I think wrestling is great when you know when to blow off a feud. And it really felt like that big match at TakeOver New Orleans where Gargano returned and beat Ciampa should have been it for those two. But they kept going back to it. And it really felt like this overall, eventual jump the shark moment for me, when they set it up, in 2020 that they were going to have, the one final beat or whatever they ended up calling that terrible cinematic match that they had. That was really the point where I was like, okay, NXT isn't what it once was, and that solidified it. So when this match came around, I didn't really love that they were doing this Gargano heel turn. I think he's a great heel, don't get me wrong. He had a great run in Dragon Gate USA and Evolve, as a top heel champion of Dragon Gate with the Open the Freedom Gate title. So, he can certainly do that role, but he's such a good, fiery babyface that the crowd likes to. I think he's better in that role. And none of this really made sense to me in the grand scheme of things. This match, though, it takes, that face-heel kind of dynamic problem that I was having with the match and the feud itself, and they have blips of that throughout the match, too, where it really doesn't feel like they know what they're trying to go for. And I don't know how much of that blame to place on the wrestlers and how much of that blame to place on whoever helped produce this match. I don't know, the full WWE schematic of how these matches come into play and how much leeway the performers get, but I expect it's not a lot. And, you see things that may look good on paper that, overall, when you really start to deconstruct them, you realize that there's these inherent flaws in the match, and they can be masked. They can be masked by great in-ring action, which this match has, and a super hot molten crowd, which this match has. So, when you watch it live, you almost have this set of blinders on it where you're like, man, that match was incredible. But when you watch it back, especially watching it back years later, like I did for this project, that's really where you start to see the holes in it. And it's why, this match, well, still great in a lot of ways. These problems are what keep it, on the lower end of this. It's still a top 50 match. I think Dave Meltzer gave it, 4 3/4 stars, and it's, universally held in a pretty high regard. But, it's those problems that keep it from achieving, a higher greatness. And both of these guys, they're so talented in the ring. So this match is filled with all of these incredible sequences and these great strike exchanges and these great big spots. And, it's all really satisfying from that end. But, it's unfortunate when a match that can succeed, physically so much still leaves me wanting a lot more from it. And my friend TJ Hawk, who has, a mini ebook coming out about, Bryan Danielson and CM Punk's, AEW matches in the year 2021, he mentions this in his review of Danielson's match with Dustin Rhodes, where, Dustin Rhodes is such a limited performer at this point in his career. He still works incredibly hard, don't get me wrong, but, age and years of working and injuries, have really started to eat up him a little bit, and he moves a lot slower. But that match worked so well in AEW because the wrestlers didn't try to make it something that it's not. They used that to their advantage. So anybody, regardless of your physical talent or your conditioning or your speed, there's capabilities there that you can have a great or an excellent match. You just have to know how to work within your limitations and use, these different elements, the story and things like that about why we love wrestling to your advantage. And then you have a match like this where, on paper, everything seems perfect, but you find these little holes that make it anything but. So the match itself, and I talk about, this face heel thing, and they try to establish, right off the bat that Gargano's a heel, and he, slaps Aleister Black at the start of the match, and Black starts, pick away at him with all these big strikes and, and start to decimate Gargano. But then Gargano starts, avoiding all of these strikes. And the first problem that I have here is they go to a spot where Gargano, mocks Aleister Black, and he hits, the cross-legged sit-down pose that Black does, which is really good. It makes sense that, Gargano is now this arrogant heel that he would do that. But then the thing that bothers me is there's he gets no comeuppance from that. So, Black starts to go on the control, and he does, his moonsault fake off the dive, and he goes into the seated pose himself, and then Gargano, runs in and, takes him out with a kick. And it seems so backward to me that, you have the heel that's mocking this signature pose. He should have been the one taken out, and then Black, can hit his pose. But they did it the opposite way, and it was like Gargano came out of that looking better. It was really weird and confusing to me. And it doesn't stop there, when it comes to that confusion with this match. Like I mentioned, though, they do multiple strike exchanges in this match that are beautiful works of art. Both of these guys throw good super kicks and knees and things like that. Everybody slaps the leg, right? So they make these great sounds, and the crowd is super into it, and it's all really good. And we get these awesome fluid exchanges that both of these wrestlers are so capable of and are a natural fit putting together. So there's an excellent spot where Black goes for a moonsault to the floor, and Gargano gets out of the way, so Black lands on his feet. Gargano wipes him out with the tope into the Tornado DDT, which is a Candice LeRae move, which I love Gargano using, going into his wife's playbook is super cool. And he follows that up with the one final beat, kind of slingshot DDT into the ring for 2 before he was really starting to use this as his finish. We get another awesome strike exchange that ends with Gargano hitting a reverse Rana, and Black, following that up with the fighting spirit and a big flying knee and a brutal head kick and German suplexes and all of this really, really great stuff. But then we get into more confusion. So Gargano gets, this big run of offense, and I think he hits the lawn dart and kind of has Black on the ropes. And Gargano again goes back to that heel kind of mocking stuff where he lifts Aleister Black up with the chin on Gargano's foot like Black would normally do before he hits someone with Black Mass. And he does this, and then he goes for the kneeling super kick, right? His part of meat in the middle, a signature move that Gargano had been using. And while he's going for this, Black tells him to wait. He basically puts the hand up and says, wait. And he sits down cross-legged and eggs Gargano to hit that super kick. And on paper, this seems like this incredible, ballsy spot, like straight out of, Katsuyori Shibata and Tomohiro Ishii, right? Like this, you can't hurt me, give me your best shot. You mocked my poses. Well, now I'm going to sit in my pose and just, and show I'm not afraid of you. But then the problem that I have with it is like Black does this and it's ballsy and it's cool, and Gargano goes for the super kick and Black baits him in and goes for like a schoolboy. And it didn't fit the heel face dynamic where Black is the face and he had this show of ballsiness and this show of power, but then he kind of just used it as almost like a heelish trick. And it felt weird and foreign and tacked on to me, and more like it was like a cool on paper spot, that the crowd would like, but it didn't really make sense in the overall story. We get another just great strike exchange. Gargano hits the tope, right? Maybe going back for that tope tornado DDT, and Black blasts him in mid dive with a bicycle knee, which is just killer. And again, what makes this match great. And then we again, kind of go back to that face heel thing. This time it works though, because it's Gargano doing it. So Gargano kind of begs off, I'm sorry for the attack. And he places his chin on Aleister Black's foot. Black, picks him up, goes for the Black Mass, and this time it's Gargano that baits him in and counters that with a schoolboy for 2, which was a really good near fall, and transitions it into the Gargano escape. So again, it's, that would have worked if that's all we got. But it was, they tried to do this juxtaposition of, the two kind of schoolboy spots, playing off of each other. But, one was to me a sacrifice of Aleister Black's character and, what they're trying to accomplish here. The finish itself, though, is really awesome, and it's a great visual. Black fights out of the Gargano escape. He hits this just ridiculous, jump spinning knee that was just, it's so killer, and it hits Gargano right on the button, and it's awesome. And then as Gargano's kind of falling from that knee, he falls, head first onto Black's, foot, and he lifts him up by the chin, hits the Black Mass. Gargano crumples into him again, and it's kind of just kept up by Black's weight, and, Black nails him one last time with one definitive Black Mass for the 3. So again, no kick out of the finisher, which I appreciated. It put it over really well. That second one was kind of that icing on the cake of you've mocked me, you attacked me, and now I'm putting you to bed. Nothing really came too much further of this feud. They ended up having an okay cage match on television to close out the year 2018. Black would end up, meeting Ciampa for the title in a mediocre match at TakeOver in January. Gargano would go on to win the North American title for Ricochet. We would get a brief DIY reunion in 2019 before it would dissolve again and lead to a WrestleMania match between the two that wouldn't happen due to Ciampa suffering a neck injury and Gargano turning face once again after only being a heel for a couple of months, and it apparently being some sort of big elaborate scam that, he baited Ciampa in with. And like I said, it was all, maybe too clever for its own good. I don't know but it didn't work for me. This match, though, it works for me in a number of ways. It doesn't work for me in others. But at the end of the day, I still have a lot of fun watching it. The sequences in it are really great. The crowd brings it to another level. And it's still super enjoyable and well worth watching, hence its inclusion on this list. Even though, it wasn't everything that it could have been because of those little plot holes that I found. You can watch this match, of course, on Peacock if you're in the States. If you're outside of the States, WWE Network is where it's at. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again tomorrow, as always, as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.